The Chicago street pulsed with the chaotic rhythm of a summer evening. Horns blaring, sneakers scuffing against cracked pavement. Marcus Tate, a wiry black man in his early 30s, leaned against his battered 1992 Honda Civic, its faded blue paint chipped like old scars. He was wiping sweat from his brow, his worn t-shirt clinging to his frame, when a sharp voice sliced through the din. "Yo, man, this your ride?" Looks like it rolled straight out of the junkyard. The words came from Ethan Caldwell, a stocky white guy in his late 20s, his smirk wide as he strutted toward Marcus, a couple of his buddies trailing behind, chuckling. The crowd nearby, locals heading home, street vendors packing up, paused, sensing trouble brewing. Marcus's jaw tightened, but he kept his eyes steady, his voice low. "It gets me where I need to go." Ethan laughed, louder now, turning to his friends. "Where's that?" "The scrap heap." The crowd shifted, some muttering, others watching silently. Marcus's hand gripped the car's door handle, his knuckles paling. He'd heard this kind of talk before too many times. But something in Ethan's taunting tone, the way his eyes gleamed with malice, felt different. Dangerous. Ethan stepped closer, his boots scuffing the pavement, his voice dripping with mockery. "Bet it don't even run. What you got in there, man? Stolen hubcaps? Or just trash, like the rest of this thing?" The crowd's murmur grew, a few phones slipping out to record. Marcus's heart pounded, but he forced a calm he didn't feel. "You don't know me, man. Back off." Ethan didn't. He circled the car, his buddies egging him on, their laughter sharp and mean. Then Ethan stopped at the trunk, his grin twisting. "What's in here? Huh? Let's see what you're hiding." Before Marcus could react, Ethan popped the trunk, the creak of rusted hinges cutting through the air. The crowd leaned in, breath held. Ethan's smirk froze, his face paling as he stared inside. Marcus's eyes flickered with something, fear, maybe, or defiance, but he didn't move. Whatever was in that trunk had shifted the air, and the street fell silent, waiting for what came next. Marcus's mind raced. He hadn't planned for this. Not here. Not now. The trunk wasn't just a trunk, it was a story. His story. And Ethan had no business touching it. But Ethan's reaction, the way his bravado crumbled, told Marcus something else. This wasn't just about a beat-up car anymore. Ethan stammered, stepping back, his voice barely a whisper. "What the hell?" Marcus straightened, his voice firm now. "You wanted to see. Now you see." The crowd pressed closer, a mix of suspicion and curiosity in their eyes. Whatever Ethan had expected, drugs, junk, something to mock, it wasn't this. Marcus glanced at the open trunk, his heart sinking. He'd spent years keeping this secret, building something no one could take from him. And now, because of some loudmouth with a chip on his shoulder, it was all at risk. The street felt like a powder keg, and Ethan's next move would light the fuse. Ethan's buddies, sensing the shift, stepped up, their faces hardening. "What's your deal, man?" One of them snapped at Marcus. "You hiding something illegal?" The accusation hung heavy, drawing gasps from the crowd. Marcus's eyes narrowed, his voice cutting through the tension. "Illegal? You want to talk about what's wrong here? Look at yourselves." He gestured at Ethan, then the crowd, his words sharp but steady. "You see a black man with a beat-up car, and you think you know everything. You don't know nothing." Ethan's face reddened, his fists clenching, but he couldn't tear his eyes from the trunk. Whatever was inside had rattled him, and Marcus saw a crack in the armor of his arrogance. But the crowd was restless now, some shouting, others whispering. Marcus knew he had seconds before this spiraled out of control. He had to act, to take back the narrative. But how? The truth was in that trunk, and it was more powerful than any lie Ethan could spit. Marcus's pulse hammered in his ears, but he forced himself to stand tall. His gaze locked on Ethan. The crowd's murmurs grew louder, a mix of confusion and accusation swirling around them. Ethan's buddies flanked him, their postures aggressive, but Ethan himself was still staring into the trunk, his bravado replaced by something else: shock, maybe even fear. Marcus took a slow step forward, his voice steady despite the chaos. "You wanted to play big man, Ethan. Now what? You gonna tell everyone what you see? Or you gonna keep running your mouth?" Ethan's eyes flicked up, meeting Marcus's for the first time without that smug glint. He didn't answer, his throat bobbing as he swallowed hard. The crowd leaned in, some craning their necks to catch a glimpse of the trunk's contents. But Marcus moved to block their view, his body a shield. Whatever was in there, it was his to protect. Inside the trunk wasn't drugs or weapons or anything Ethan's narrow mind might have conjured. It was a collection of carefully packed boxes, each labeled in neat handwriting: books for kids, clothes for shelter, supplies for community center. Marcus had spent months gathering donations for a youth program he'd started in his neighborhood, a program no one in this crowd knew about, not even his closest friends. He'd kept it quiet, not out of shame, but because he wanted the work to speak for itself. The car, this beat-up Civic, was his lifeline, his way of hauling hope to kids who had none. But to Ethan, it was just a target, a prop for his cruelty. Marcus's chest tightened as he realized how easily this could be twisted, how a good thing could be made to look suspicious in the wrong hands. Ethan finally found his voice, though it was shakier now. "What is this? Some kind of scam? You running some hustle with this junk?" His words were meant to sting, to rally the crowd back to his side, but they lacked conviction. Marcus saw his chance and took it. "Scam? You think I'm out here risking everything for a hustle? Those boxes are for kids who got nothing, kids you wouldn't even look at twice." He turned to the crowd, his voice rising, raw with emotion. "This man saw my car, saw my skin, and decided I'm less than him. That's the real scam, thinking you can judge someone without knowing their story." A few in the crowd nodded, their expressions softening, but others weren't convinced, their eyes darting between Marcus and Ethan, waiting for the next move. Ethan's buddy, a lanky guy with a buzz cut, stepped forward, jabbing a finger at Marcus. "You're full of it. Why's it all packed up like this? Looks shady to me." The accusation hit like a spark on dry grass, and the crowd's tension flared. Marcus's mind raced at a could explain, but would they listen? He'd seen how quickly truth could be drowned out by suspicion, especially when it came to a black man in a place like this. He took a breath, choosing his words carefully. "Shady. I'm out here every day, working for my community. What you doing, besides tearing people down?" The crowd shifted, some murmuring in agreement, others still skeptical. Ethan, sensing his grip slipping, lunged forward, slamming the trunk shut. "Enough of this. Let's see what the cops think about your little charity." The word dripped with sarcasm, and Marcus's stomach dropped. This was about to get worse. The word cops sent a ripple through the crowd, some stepping back, others pulling out their phones to record. Marcus's heart sank deeper. He knew what a call to the police could mean in a situation like this: misunderstandings, escalation, danger. His eyes flicked to Ethan, whose smirk was creeping back, sensing he'd regained control. "Yeah, let's get some real answers," Ethan said, pulling out his phone, his fingers hovering over the screen. Marcus's mind raced. He couldn't let this spiral further, but he also couldn't let Ethan twist his work into something it wasn't. He stepped forward, his voice loud enough to cut through the crowd's buzz. Go ahead. Call them. But you better be ready to explain why you're harassing a man trying to help his community. The crowd quieted. Some nodding. Others whispering. Ethan hesitated, his thumb frozen over his phone. Marcus seized the moment, turning to the crowd. You all know me. I grew up here. I'm not hiding anything. Those boxes, they're for the kids at the West Side Community Center. Books, clothes, supply stuff to give them a chance. He pointed at the trunk, his voice shaking with conviction. This car. It's old. Yeah, but it's carried more hope than this guy's ever known. A woman in the crowd, her face weathered but kind, spoke up. I seen him at the center. He's there every week, helping the kids. Her words shifted the mood, and a few others murmured agreement. Ethan's smirk faltered, his eyes darting to his buddies for support. But they were less certain now, their bravado fading under the crowd's shifting gaze. Marcus felt a spark of hope, but he knew this wasn't over. Ethan wasn't the type to back down easily. Ethan's voice cut through again, sharper now, desperate to regain ground. You expect us to believe this? Some saint in a junk car. I bet you're just fronting for something else. He stepped closer to Marcus, his chest puffed out, trying to intimidate. Marcus didn't flinch, but his hands balled into fists. He'd faced men like Ethan before, men who saw his skin and assumed the worst. But this time, it wasn't just about him. It was about the kids, the center, everything he'd built. You want to talk about fronting? Marcus shot back, his voice low but fierce. Look at you, picking a fight to feel big. What's that say about you? The crowd's murmurs grew louder, some clapping, others shouting for Ethan to back off. The tension was electric, and Marcus could feel it teetering on the edge of violence. Then, a new voice broke through, a deep, authoritative one. What's going on here? A tall black man in his 50s, wearing a faded jacket, pushed through the crowd. It was James, the director of the community center, his presence commanding respect. Marcus exhaled, relief washing over him. James's eyes scanned the scene, landing on Ethan, then the car. Marcus, you good? He asked, his tone calm but firm. Marcus nodded, but before he could speak, Ethan jumped in. This guy's got a trunk full of stuff, acting like he's some hero. I say he's up to something. James raised an eyebrow, then walked to the trunk, popping it open. He looked inside, then turned to the crowd. This is exactly what he says it is. Donations for our kids. Marcus has been doing this for years. The crowd's mood shifted fully now, anger turning toward Ethan. Marcus felt the tide turning, but he knew this wasn't the end, not yet. James's words hung in the air, and the crowd's murmurs turned into a low roar of support for Marcus. Ethan's face twisted, his confidence crumbling under the weight of the truth. His buddies shifted uncomfortably, their eyes darting between Ethan and the crowd, sensing they were losing the room. Marcus stood tall, his chest heaving, but his voice was steady as he addressed Ethan directly. You thought you could tear me down, make me look small. But you're the one looking small now. The crowd erupted in cheers, some clapping, others shouting encouragement. Ethan's jaw clenched, his hands twitching as if he might lash out. But James stepped between them, his presence a wall. You got something else to say, young man? James asked, his tone calm but laced with steel. Ethan said nothing, his eyes dropping to the pavement. The crowd wasn't done, though. A teenage girl, her braids swinging as she stepped forward, pointed at Ethan. You don't even live here. Why are you messing with Marcus? Her words sparked more voices, the crowd's anger now fully aimed at Ethan. Marcus raised a hand, trying to calm them. Enough. He's not worth it. But the tension was still there, raw and volatile. Ethan's buddies tugged at his arm, urging him to leave, but he shook them off, his pride wounded. "This ain't over," he muttered, his voice barely audible. He turned to walk away, but not before throwing one last glance at the trunk, his expression a mix of confusion and resentment. Marcus watched him go, his heart still racing, knowing this moment would linger for both of them. As the crowd began to disperse, James clapped a hand on Marcus's shoulder. "You handled that better than most would've." Marcus shook his head, his voice low. "I didn't want this. I just wanted to do my work." James nodded, his eyes soft with understanding. "I know. But sometimes, the work puts you in the fire." He glanced at the trunk, the boxes still neatly packed, untouched by the chaos. "You're doing good, Marcus. Don't let anyone make you doubt that." Marcus managed a small smile, but his mind was elsewhere. Ethan's words, his accusations, had cut deep not because they were true, but because they echoed the suspicions Marcus had faced his whole life. He'd built something real with the community center, but moments like this reminded him how fragile it all was. By now, the street was quieter, the neon lights flickering as night settled in. Marcus closed the trunk, the creak of the hinges sounding louder in the stillness. A few stragglers from the crowd lingered, offering words of support. "Keep doing what you do, man," one said, clapping Marcus on the back. Another, an older woman, pressed a crumpled dollar bill into his hand. "For the kids," she whispered. Marcus nodded, his throat tight. He didn't need their money, but he understood the gesturite was trust, hard-earned and precious. As he climbed into his car, the weight of the day settled on him. Ethan might be gone for now, but Marcus knew men like him didn't just disappear. This wasn't the last he'd hear of this, and the thought made his grip tighten on the steering wheel. The next morning, Marcus woke to a buzzing phone, notifications piling up. Word of the confrontation had spread, fueled by videos posted online. Some clips painted him as a hero. Others twisted the story, calling his charity a front. The internet was a wildfire, and Marcus was caught in its blaze. He sat on the edge of his bed, scrolling through comments, some praising his work, others echoing Ethan's suspicions. "Just another thug playing saint," one read. His stomach churned, but he forced himself to get up. He had work to do. The kids at the community center didn't care about viral videos or strangers' opinions. They needed him, and he wasn't about to let Ethan's poison stop him. At the West Side Community Center, the air was different, tenser, but warmer too. Kids ran up to Marcus as he hauled in the boxes from his trunk, their voices overlapping with questions about the fight. "Did you really shut that guy down?" one asked, eyes wide. Marcus chuckled, ruffling the kid's hair. "Just told the truth. That's all." But inside, he was uneasy. James met him at the door, his face grim. "We got a problem," he said, showing Marcus his phone. A local news outlet had picked up the story, framing it as a public dispute over suspicious activity. Ethan's name wasn't mentioned, but Marcus's was, along with a blurry photo of his car. "They're making it sound like you're the bad guy," James said, his voice tight. Marcus's jaw clenched. He'd expected pushback, but not this. By midday, the center was buzzing with more than just kids. Reporters lingered outside, cameras flashing as Marcus unloaded supplies. He ignored them, focusing on the task at hand, but their questions followed him. "Mr. Tate, care to comment on the allegations?" one shouted. Marcus kept his head down, his hands steady as he stacked books on a shelf. But the weight of their scrutiny was suffocating. Inside, James pulled him aside. You need to say something. Marcus. Clear this up before it gets worse. Marcus shook his head, his voice low. I shouldn't have to prove I'm not a criminal. James sighed, his eyes heavy. I know. But the world ain't fair. And you know it. Marcus nodded, the truth settling like a stone in his chest. He'd have to fight this. Not with fists, but with words. That evening, Marcus stood in the center's small meeting room, facing a handful of volunteers and community members. The air was thick with concern, but also trust. He took a deep breath, his voice steady but raw. You all know what I'm about. Those boxes. This center, it's for the kids. For us. Some folks out there want to tear that down. Make it something it's not. I'm not going to let them. The room erupted in applause. And for the first time that day, Marcus felt a flicker of hope. But as he stepped outside, his phone buzzed again, a message from an unknown number. You think you won. This ain't over. Marcus's blood ran cold. He didn't need to guess who it was. Ethan was back. And this time, he wasn't alone. Marcus stared at the text, his heart pounding. The words were a threat, plain and simple, and they carried Ethan's venom even through the screen. He pocketed his phone, scanning the darkening street outside the community center. The reporters had left, but the air felt heavy, like a storm was coming. He drove home in silence, the Civic's engine rumbling as his mind churned. Ethan wasn't just some loudmouth anymore, was a problem, one that could unravel everything Marcus had built. By the time he pulled into his driveway, he'd made a decision. He wasn't going to wait for Ethan's next move. He'd take the fight to him not with anger, but with proof of who he was and what he stood for. The next day, Marcus and James organized a community event at the center, a public distribution of the donations he'd been collecting. They invited everyone, locals, reporters, even skeptics. Marcus wanted the truth out there, unfiltered. The center's small lot was packed with tables piled high with books, clothes, and school supplies. Kids ran around, laughing, while volunteers handed out flyers about the program. Marcus stood at the front, mic in hand, his voice steady but charged with emotion. This is what we do here, he said, gesturing to the tables. This is what that car carries. Not lies, not scams, just hope for our kids. The crowd cheered, cameras flashing, but Marcus's eyes scanned for Ethan. He wasn't there, but Marcus felt his shadow, lurking. As the event wound down, a man approached Marcus, his face unfamiliar but his posture tense. You Marcus Tate? He asked, his voice low. Marcus nodded, bracing himself. The man handed him a folded piece of paper. Someone left this for you. Marcus opened it, his stomach twisting. It was a printed screenshot of an online post, accusing him of using the community center to launder money. The post was anonymous, but the language sharp, vicious, reeked of Ethan. Marcus's hands shook as he showed it to James, who cursed under his breath. This is getting out of hand, James said. We need to shut this down. Marcus nodded, but his mind was racing. Ethan wasn't just taunting him now, was trying to destroy him. That night, Marcus sat at his kitchen table, the paper crumpled in front of him. He'd faced prejudice before, but this was different, calculated, personal. He thought of the kids at the center, their faces bright with hope, and his resolve hardened. He wasn't going to let Ethan's lies win. He called a friend, a local activist named Lena, who'd dealt with smear campaigns before. We need to go public, she said, her voice firm. Show them who you are before they believe the worst. Marcus agreed, but as he hung up, his phone buzzed again, another text from the unknown number. Keep playing hero. You'll regret it. Marcus's jaw tightened, He wasn't backing down, but he knew the fight was about to get uglier. Marcus barely slept, the weight of Ethan's threats pressing on him like a physical force. By morning, he was back at the community center, working with Lena to plan their response. They decided to hold a press conference, a chance to set the record straight before the lies spread further. The center's small meeting room was packed with reporters, community members, even a few city officials. Marcus stood at the front, his hands steady but his heart racing. He spoke clearly, his voice carrying the weight of years spent fighting for his place in the world. I'm Marcus Tate. I've lived here my whole life. I've seen what happens when we let lies divide us. Those boxes in my car, they're for our kids, our future. Anyone who says different is trying to tear down what we've built together. The room erupted in applause, but Marcus's eyes caught a figure in the back, Ethan, standing with his arms crossed, his face unreadable. Lena took the mic next, laying out the facts, receipts for donations, testimonials from families, photos of the kids using the supplies. The evidence was undeniable, and the reporters scribbled furiously, their skepticism fading. But Ethan didn't move, his gaze locked on Marcus. When the Q&A started, he stepped forward, his voice cutting through the room. If you're so innocent, why all the secrecy? Why hide those boxes? The question hung heavy, and the room quieted. Marcus's chest tightened, but he didn't flinch. I wasn't hiding, he said, his voice calm but firm. I was working. Not everyone needs to shout their good deeds to make them real. The crowd murmured in agreement, and Ethan's face reddened, his argument crumbling. For the first time, he looked small, exposed. But Ethan wasn't done. As the conference ended, he approached Marcus outside, away from the cameras. You think you're untouchable now? He hissed, his voice low. I know people. This ain't over. Marcus met his gaze, unafraid. You're right. It ain't over. But you're fighting the wrong fight. Ethan's jaw twitched, but he turned and walked away, his steps heavy with frustration. Marcus watched him go, knowing this wasn't the end. The lies, the threats, they'd keep coming. But something had shifted. The community was behind him now, their trust a shield against Ethan's venom. As he drove home, the Civic's engine humming, Marcus felt a quiet strength. He'd faced the fire and come out stronger. Back at the center the next day, the mood was lighter. Kids ran through the halls, clutching new books, their laughter a reminder of why Marcus kept going. James pulled him aside, a rare smile on his face. You did good, man. You turned it around. Marcus shrugged, but his chest swelled with pride. The fight wasn't over, but he'd won this round. The online posts had slowed, replaced by stories of the center's work, shared by people who'd seen the truth. Marcus's phone buzzed a message from Lena. Check this out. It was a video from the event, gone viral, with thousands of comments praising his courage. For the first time in days, Marcus smiled. The road ahead was long, but he wasn't walking it alone. Weeks passed, and the storm around Marcus began to settle. The community center thrived, its programs growing as more people donated, inspired by Marcus's story. The viral video had done more than clear his name. It had shone a light on the kids, the real heart of his work. Families brought supplies, volunteers signed up, and even a local business offered to fund a new reading room. Marcus's Civic, once a target of mockery, became a symbol of resilience, parked proudly outside the center. But Ethan's shadow lingered. Marcus hadn't heard from him since the press conference, but he knew men like Ethan didn't just vanish. Still, he refused to live in fear. He had a community to serve, and he wasn't going to let one man's prejudice stop him. One evening, as Marcus locked up the center, a figure approached from the shadows. His heart skipped, but as the man stepped into the light, Marcus saw it was Ethan alone. His shoulders slumped, his usual swagger gone. "I need to talk," Ethan said, his voice low, almost broken. Marcus tensed, ready for another fight, but something in Ethan's eyes stopped him. They sat on the steps outside, the night quiet around them. Ethan spoke slowly, his words heavy. "I was wrong. I saw your car. Saw you. And I assumed the worst." He paused, his hands fidgeting. "I grew up hearing certain things, believing them. But those boxes, what you're doing, it's real." Marcus listened, his anger fading into something else, cautious hope. Ethan wasn't apologizing. Not exactly. But this was as close as he'd get. Marcus took a breath, choosing his words carefully. "You didn't just judge me, Ethan. You judged everyone like me. That's what you gotta unlearn." Ethan nodded, his eyes on the ground. "I'm trying," he said, almost a whisper. Marcus didn't trust him fully, not yet, but he saw something in Ethan he hadn't before, a crack in the armor, a chance for change. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the past weeks hanging between them. Then Ethan stood, offering a small nod before walking away. Marcus watched him go, his heart lighter but still wary. Change was slow, messy, but it was possible. He'd seen it in the kids, in the community, and now, maybe, in Ethan. As Marcus drove home, the Civic's engine humming softly, he thought about the kids at the center, their futures unwritten. He thought about the crowd that night on the street, the way they'd rallied around him when the truth came out. He thought about Ethan, a man shaped by the same broken world Marcus had fought his whole life. The road to justice wasn't straight, and prejudice didn't vanish overnight. But every box he delivered, every kid he helped, was a step forward. Marcus parked his car, its dense and faded paint glowing under the streetlight. It wasn't just a care, it was a promise, a reminder that even in the face of hate, he could build something better. And he would.